opportunity to talk about the movie and things like that. But what we felt was this being an opportunity to be with John Soderberg and discover the kind of heart of a man that has had an incredible capacity to witness the pain and brutality of humanity. And as it says, from that same humanity, that he's witnessed the instances of humanity's rare and unearthly beauty of hope, compassion, and faith. And you give that to us, John.
Thank you.
And we look forward to hearing from you, your life, and what it is you want to share with us before offering you our word. Thank you. Thank you. Let's give John a round of applause.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Been looking forward to it. Seeing this film is extremely nostalgic. Margaret said why I was invited to speak and why you all might be interested in what I have to say. But I have tried to make this world a better place and more peaceful place through my art and service work. I have felt that besides showing the beauty of this world, it is my duty as an artist to expose the atrocities and brutality of it, and to try to inspire empathy on those who see my work. Given enough empathy, brutality becomes impossible, and wars become less destructive. I experienced Afghanistan before the Soviet-Russian invasion and after, and saw the effects of war. War is usually an insane activity. Aside from any moral issues, the cost of war is illogical when you consider the vast amounts of money spent and the effects on national debt, the millions of lives lost on both sides against questionable gains. And war breeds hatred, which breeds extremism and terrorism. I served in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam War. That was insane enough. Then Iraq and Afghanistan. Seems to me peace is much cheaper and more beneficial than war. Duh. Before the invasion, Afghan city women wore Western clothing and girls were educated. The average Afghan had no problems with Christians or Jews because they had a book of spiritual teachings. Afghanistan is a Central Asian country, not a Middle Eastern one. Big difference. They did not like Russians because they did not have a book. Also because since the time of Ivan the Terrible in the 1500s, Russia had been stealing bits of northern Afghanistan. When the Russians invaded in December of 1979, I was amazed at the stupidity, because no one had ever won a lasting war in that country. Tamerlane had invaded and made Mountain of Skulls in the Middle Ages. Attila the Hun invaded, and the British invaded twice. Then the Russians came. The only way to win a lasting war in Afghanistan is to kill every Afghan. They will never stop fighting. They have a fierce pride. They could be your most loyal friend or your worst enemy. My brother Paul witnessed the end of a blood feud there, which had gone on for over 4 centuries between two villages. Shakespeare got his idea for Romeo and Juliet from Afghan feuds. But the Russians didn't just invade to win a war. They invaded and occupied the country because of the vast mineral deposits there to plunder and rape Afghanistan. When my brother Paul was there in 1972, did a foreign aid package to their neighbor to modernize the Afghan highway system. And my brother Paul was a full colonel in the Afghan army. The Russians built only a 6-lane superhighway thick enough for heavy tanks. The road came down into Afghanistan and hung a right directly toward the oil fields. That's the only thing they built. My father Richard, no bio here, my father Richard graduated from UCLA Caltech with a civil engineering degree, top of his class. He enlisted in the Navy and ended up an officer on a landing ship medium, which cruised up to the source of the Yangtze River. So he had overseas experience. He got back, married my mother, Betty. Then he was commissioned directly by the Afghan King Mohammed Zahir with approval from the State Department to build and operate the first engineering college in that country. So Richard and Betty left Pasadena in 1947 before I was born and sailed to the Philippines with my newborn brother David, my eldest brother. They then took the night train to Peshawar, Pakistan. They were almost killed on the train when it was stopped by bandits and looted and shot people. In Peshawar, they met a Jeep and driver who drove them up the Khyber Pass toward Kabul. The pass was desolate. No humans were around for many miles, like lunar landscape. They just crossed over the border when my mom in the back Jeep with David made a major mess in his diapers. So my mom wanted it up and asked the driver what to do about it, and the driver refused to stop. She said, throw it out the window, you can't stop. So my mom felt bad, but she did. Then she looked back a second later, and 6 Khyber bandits with rifles and swords popped up out of the rocks, went racing back to the Jeep. They made jewelry out of tin cans, other things thrown out of cars. So the first one there got it. So the guy in the middle took a running jump and grabbed, and got baby poo on his face. And they started dancing around, screaming and yelling, shaking their fists and shooting at the Jeep. So my mom's in the back with a newborn baby. Bullets whizzing past, Jeep fishtailing, but they didn't get hit. They made it to Kabul. My dad built and operated AIT, the Afghan Institute of Technology. I was born in 1950, and as a child I remember many traditional banquets at the homes of village chiefs or khans. Everybody there loved Americans. Everybody I met in the country loved Americans. They were kind and generous. We left Afghanistan in 1950. We left Afghanistan in 1955 and moved to India to live for 6 years, and Thailand for 8 years. My brother Paul went back to Afghanistan in 1972 and was a full colonel working on famine relief. That country was suffering the worst famine in their history. 600,000 starved to death. And disease was rampant, cholera and many others. Paul personally saved the lives of 30,000 people working up near the Russian border, across the river from Russia in various villages. Russians crossed the river 3 times and tried to kill my brother. Bullets in the air. A subtle Khan got him out. So I sculpted his portrait called Lion of God, life size. All of this destabilized Afghanistan and made it much easier for the Russians to invade. They came in on that superhighway, and during their occupation, before they were driven out, they killed 1 million civilians and caused 5 million refugees. out of a country that was around 14 million to begin with. They lined up 40 of the royal family, babies to grandmothers in the palace, and mowed them down with submachine gun fire. They slaughtered and killed without check all over the country. A favorite technique of theirs was to herd a whole village of people into large culverts and seal both ends, then throw in poison gas canisters. And another one which particularly enraged me was the use of anti-personnel mines disguised as toys, targeting children, little trucks, cars, and dolls. I was working with the daughter of the Afghan ambassador to Europe at the time of the invasion, and I saw hundreds of 8x10 black and whites of maimed children. They had enough explosive to maim, but they tried not to have too much so they'd kill the kids, because a maimed child was more effective as terrorism. Anyway, that led me to sculpt steel butterflies. My portfolio's outside on the table. I sculpted a little Afghan girl reaching for a toy butterfly, and she's looking over her shoulder like somebody's yelling at her, don't pick it up. And also I sculpted Line to God, like I said. You saved my brother's life. Those two pieces were unveiled at an event at the Biltmore in Phoenix with Bob Hope and a bunch of celebrities. It was the night for the Afghan war orphans. Many of the finest artworks in our culture have been about atrocities. Picasso's Guernica, shows a horse screaming in agony during German shelling of a French village. Rodin's The Burghers of Clay, monumental bronze, shows small-town French officials being led out to execution by the Nazis, or Germans, First World War, I think. Michelangelo's Pieta shows the crucified Christ with Mary, and a lot of people don't know, but millions of other Jews were crucified by the Romans. So this all led me to continue sculpting atrocities along with showing the beauty of the world. When I was working with Amnesty International against apartheid in South Africa, I sculpted Steve Biko life-size. He was unfairly arrested on a minor nonviolent crime, convicted and beaten to death in a jail cell. He was a nonviolent activist. Denzel Washington played him in a movie, Cry Freedom, Denzel's first big movie. I sculpted others, including a life-size piece of my Rancho Please Charitable Foundation's founder holding a child in his arms who had been found near death in a warehouse, abandoned. It was in Mexico. We got her to our orphanage where we saved her life, educated her, got her adopted, and she's married now with kids. As I have said, I believe that ours, any media, including film, who make this type of art exposing atrocities tend to ignite empathy in all the good people who view it, which tends to get them involved in various ways, which tends to promote peace as the only logical answer. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Well, so before we offer the award, we'd love to have any of you who would like to make any comments or have a question for John. Take a moment.
That's a first.
Their emotions at the moment, but here's Linda.
Hey John, it's Linda Goldenstein.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. This was just so moving, and the movie in itself was, but what you shared with us afterwards, I'm having a hard time not being in tears right now. But thank you for sharing.
Thank you, my
for
honor.
sharing that. It was just so profound, as so much of your work is, and always talking to you is. Thank you.
Thank you. Most welcome.
Yeah, I don't know if I can talk either. I'm crying too, but I just want to thank you so much for what you contribute, and the beauty of your heart and the things, that you write, the things that you post, just the continued outpouring of your art on every level. I just appreciate it so much, and have so much admiration and respect and love for you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Back at you.
contributing so much to this community, man.
Thank you.
You're something.
Thank you.
You are really something. You're one of a kind.
John, I've got a question for you. You were seeing the film today for the first time, like everybody else here was. What was that like for you, having been born over there and experienced?
Very, very nostalgic. I mean, my first home was in Kabul, a little mud brick thing. My parents had to build their own well, dig it, they had to bury food in their living room floor because in the winter you couldn't buy food in Afghanistan. So they would have it to dig it up and feed them and us four kids. But yeah, nostalgic as hell.
Yeah. Is there anything you, now 72-year-old John Soderberg, would go back and tell 5-year-old John Soderberg or the people of Afghanistan, if there was something you could tell them? I did not share. I'm not expecting you to answer quickly because I just dropped this on you, but is there anything now that you know that you would have told the people back then or done? You've done so much for your art, through your art, but is there anything you would want them to know now after witnessing what you've witnessed?
Okay. Number one, it's 71, not 72.
I was trying to do the math. You got to turn 72.
I'm fighting for
sometimes.
every year. That's a toughie. What I know, what I learned, most of them know and learned the hard way. I think they were helpless. Most people were helpless. There were too many greedy armies, forces, raping a country, killing, none of them would listen to me if I had a chance to talk to them, so I don't know, I'm sorry.
That's all right, no, you're doing fine. Talk to us about I know a few of your pieces of art specifically benefit your foundations and things. Can you tell us more about that specifically? I know one was the orphanage. Is there other work that your foundation does that these sculptures?
Yeah, I've done many. Our foundation is almost 40 years old. Nobody gets a salary. All the money we raise goes to orphans, elders, everybody in between. We've literally saved the lives of tens of thousands of people and empowered hundreds of thousands of people through education, and do periodic famine relief giveaways to qualified people, the poorest people. When one Sunday some years ago, we teamed up with 2 Rotary clubs and 2 churches and fed 50,000 people in one day. And a bag of food, a blanket, and a toy if they had a kid. And these people were so hungry and desperate, and they stood in line in the rain and snow for 2 days to get a bag of food. And I had grandmothers, great-grandmothers go down on their knees in the mud, genuflecting and praising God, thanking Him for the food. I got away from your question there.
No, that's exactly right.
So I've done a lot of artwork, bronzes, jewelry, whatever, as fundraisers. We've done a lot of other things too, extreme sports, where we rode 300 miles for the Navajo Reservation, all of us getting pledges, 60 riders, 40 crew, and we raised over $700,000 for our programs. And we did a food giveaway there too at the old trading post. Bit of Hochi, I think, or something. So I don't know.
Margaret, I can't think of anyone more deserving of the Peace Award than John Soderberg, quite frankly. You're absolutely brilliant. Everyone who was speechless, who didn't know what to say and couldn't quite put the words together, as I am. It's unbelievable what you contributed to our world and peace and to Sedona. So thank you very, very much for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, John. So, we couldn't think of a better person to offer the Sedona International City of Peace Award than someone who herself has been a curator, has supported so many artists, visual artists, musicians throughout our community, and in particular has such high regard for you. And she also was a major sponsor of our Sedona Arts for Peace Week, along with some other amazing people and organizations. So I wanted to welcome Linda Goldenstein up to offer you the Sedona International City of Peace Award. Linda.
My old friend John Soderberg. I don't want to come up here and just cry in front of everybody, so I'll take a deep breath. John and I have known each other for over 35 years, probably. And we met in Camp Verde. You know, I used to be his banker in the old days. And I would think, who is this guy in this beret coming in with, you know, all these interesting transactions happening, and we soon began to learn so much about him and his lovely family and all of the wonderful things that he was creating. He was always so open about that, sharing about the artwork and all the different things that they were doing, about the charities, about philanthropy. It's a simple story. Years ago, I don't even know if you remember, but we were in Camp Verde and you offered $100. This is, you know, $100 was a lot then. And for the middle school kids for an essay contest. And, do you remember that? And it had such an impression on me. I bring it up today because as I was thinking about John, it really planted the seed of philanthropy in me. And I just wanted to share that, you know, that little thing. I was so blown away that somebody would create that. Thank you. And it was the beginning of so many different things. And truly in the arts, which some of you may know I'm in the arts and some may not, but I can really thank John for a lot of that influence that sent me on that path that changed my life. So in so many ways, John has touched me deeply, as he has touched all of us, and hundreds of thousands of people around the world, and just so very grateful to be able to call him friend and to be able to give him this award today, as we all can clearly see how deserving he is of it, and such a special person. And I want to say too, regarding the arts, John is this amazing sculptor that we know, but many of us don't know that he's also an innovator in creating the very clay that sculptors use today. Some of the tools, he has changed the landscape of sculpting in his lifetime with that, and taught so many, so thank you for that too.
Can I brag about one thing? Disneyland Sculpture Studios uses my clay. So all the dinosaurs and everything were originally sculpted in classic clay.
So it's not bronze, it's crystal.
Sedona International City of Peace, the 10th Sedona International Day of Peace Award, presented to John Soderberg, bronze sculptor, artist, peace ambassador, September 21st, 2022, for expanding our hearts to love ourselves and include all of life. John Soderberg.
Thank you all.
Thank you.